The headline dropped like a thunderclap across Washington and New York media circles. Jasmine Crockett leaks private comments from an ABC News host. Within hours, he's suspended. This wasn't gossip whispered in hallways. It wasn't rumor dressed up as scandal. It was a revelation direct, undeniable, and catastrophic for one of the nation's most trusted news brands. Crockett, already known for her fiery presence in Congress, stunned reporters when she revealed that an ABC anchor long considered a polished face of mainstream journalism had made private remarks so incendiary they could not be ignored. Within minutes of her disclosure, the network confirmed his suspension pending an internal review. The story ignited instantly. Newsrooms scrambled. Social media exploded. Viewers who had tuned in nightly to see his calm demeanor now asked themselves, what was he really saying when the cameras were off? The cinematic image of Crockett, standing at a podium, eyes blazing under the glare of press cameras, framed the moment. She didn't shout. She didn't gloat. Instead, she dropped the revelation with surgical calm. When those tasked with delivering the news speak in ways that betray their duty to truth and fairness, the public deserves to know, and I will not sit silent. The microphones clicked. The room erupted. And the questions began to spiral. What exactly had he said? How did Crockett get access to his private remarks? Was this a personal feud or a larger indictment of bias within the network? And most unsettling of all, how many other anchors say one thing on air and another behind closed doors is less than #0? 3# is greater than. You're watching the latest. Make sure to subscribe and tap that like button to stay informed. As viewers debated, Crockett's words seemed less like a revelation and more like a detonation, a strike not just at one host, but at the credibility of an entire institution. If you want to follow this story as it unfolds, don't forget to like and subscribe. What comes next may change how you see the news forever. Behind the polished glass walls of ABC headquarters, chaos reigned. Executives convened emergency meetings, their phones buzzing with calls from advertisers, lawyers, and political contacts. The host in question, whose name the network initially withheld, was quietly escorted off the set, just hours before his scheduled broadcast. The leak. Every major scandal often begins with a small detail. In ABC's case, it started with a phone carelessly left on a dinner table and a recording stored in silence, waiting for the day it would blow open an entire empire. According to sources, the recording surfaced at a private media party where wine glasses shimmered and words suddenly became careless. The ABC anchor, famous on air for his calm demeanor and impeccable delivery, let slip remarks that turned everything he had ever stood for on television into a farce. He spoke of how to tweak wording to please the audience, of the groups the network would never dare offend, and worse, of who really controls the news. You're watching the latest. Make sure to subscribe and tap that like button to stay informed. In that room, a few nervous laughs broke out. But one phone kept recording everything, and somehow through friends, through allies, or through channels only, Crockett might know the recording found its way into the hands of the Texas Congresswoman. Questions began to swirl. How did she get it? Did someone deliberately hand it to her to take down ABC? Or did she stumble upon it and decide to drop it at the perfect time? No one had a definitive answer. Only one thing was clear. When Crockett unveiled the recording before the press, there was no room left for ambiguity. Amid the flashing cameras, she declared, "This is not a rumor. This is the raw truth. And if a representative of ABC can say such things behind the curtain, then the public has every right to question the entire system." The blow struck like a sharpened knife. It didn't just suspend one anchor. It planted doubt over the credibility of an entire brand that had stood for decades. The network's panic. The moment Crockett dropped her bombshell, a shockwave rippled through ABC's glass tower in Manhattan. The normally quiet hallways, where only the tapping of keyboards could be heard, now echoed with hurried footsteps, incessant phone calls, and the slam of conference room doors. The executives convened an emergency meeting. The air was thick. Slides thrown onto the screen, restless glances exchanged, strong coffee flooding the tables. One director blurted out, "If we don't act now, we'll die from losing credibility before we even lose viewers." Leaked internal emails later revealed just how palpable that panic was. One memo read, "Emergency situation. Immediate suspension must be considered. If Crockett has more recordings, ABC will face an unprecedented trust crisis." Behind the dry wording lay genuine fear. Fear that public trust, already fragile, would collapse entirely. Fear that advertisers who poured millions in ad revenue would turn their backs. You're watching the latest. Make sure to subscribe and tap that like button to stay informed. And indeed, within 24 hours, several major partners had sent emails demanding quick clarification. One prominent advertiser wrote bluntly, "We cannot tie our brand to a network entangled in an unresolved scandal." Meanwhile, the PR office was overflowing. Press releases were written then scrapped, edited then trashed, all in the search for language strong enough to reassure, yet not so strong as to admit systemic fault. But in another corner, a few young staffers whispered, "We've always called ourselves truth tellers. Now who's going to tell the truth about us?" The panic inside ABC was never just about losing one anchor. It was about the brand itself, the name synonymous with honest news, now forced to look in the mirror. And the reflection staring back, exposed through Crockett's revelation, was no longer as pristine as the audience had once believed. Crockett's calculated move. For Jasmine Crockett, the leak was more than revelation, it was a statement. She appeared again before cameras, her voice calm but unrelenting. This isn't about one man. This is about a culture that thinks it can say one thing to America and another behind closed doors. I'm telling you now, that era is over. The line ricocheted across the digital sphere. Commentators framed it as a call for accountability. Some even compared it to the whistleblowers of past eras, the moment when someone dared to puncture the facade of media neutrality. Social media inferno. Online, the story spread like wildfire. Memes mocked the suspended host images of him with duct tape over his mouth, captioned, "Off-air honesty." Others praised Crockett, hailing her as the Congresswoman who finally held the media accountable. Hashtags surged. Number Crockett leaks. Number AB silence. Number truth exposed. The narrative, once controlled by network anchors, was now in the hands of millions of viewers armed with retweets, TikToks, and Instagram reels. The host's polished image, built over decades, collapsed in days. Behind closed doors. Meanwhile, political operatives whispered that Crockett's move was not spontaneous. Some claimed she had been sitting on the recording for weeks, waiting for maximum impact. Others speculated that allies had encouraged her to strike now, when media credibility was already at historic lows. Regardless, the effect was undeniable. Crockett had shifted the conversation from what politicians say to what journalists say when they think no one is listening. And ABC News, once a fortress of credibility, now looked vulnerable, its walls cracked by the very stories it once prided itself on exposing. The crescendo. The crescendo came when another leak surfaced. A draft of ABC's internal investigation report, revealing that multiple staffers had heard the host make questionable remarks in the past, but chose not to escalate them. You're watching the latest. Make sure to subscribe and tap that like button to stay informed. Suddenly, this wasn't just one man's suspension. It was an indictment of a culture of silence. Crockett seized on the revelation, delivering a fiery speech on the House floor. This is not an isolated slip. This is systemic. When media giants protect their own while claiming to hold others accountable, democracy itself suffers. If you wonder why trust is collapsing, look no further. Applause broke out among her colleagues. Cameras captured the moment, cementing it as the high point of the scandal. The reckoning. By week's end, the host remained suspended, ABC's credibility bruised, and Crockett's profile elevated. Yet the story was far from resolved. Would the network fire him, or quietly reinstate once outrage cooled? Would other recordings surface, And perhaps most haunting, how many other anchors, producers, and executives had skeletons waiting to be revealed? The cinematic image lingered. Crockett standing under Capitol lights, microphone in hand, declaring an end to duplicity, while in a glass tower miles away, executives stared at empty chairs and darkened studios. America was left with questions. Was this a singular scandal, or the start of a wave of revelations that could topple media empires? Was Crockett acting as a truth-teller, or as a politician who had learned to weaponize truth itself? No one could answer. Not yet. But one thing was certain. The suspension of an ABC host was not just a headline. It was a warning shot. And the echo of Crockett's words, "That era is over," was still ringing. What do you think? Is this the fall of a single host, or the unraveling of an entire institution? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next chapter may arrive sooner than anyone expects.